Welcome to inToit Reviews. I'm your friendly neighborhood reviewer here with something that's relatively new, kind of special, and needs a bit more love than it's getting from the audiophile community right now. This is the Beyerdynamics 17.7X Go by Drop. So let's get into it. Before we get into it, I wanted to let everybody know that I'm doing a giveaway starting at the 500 subscriber mark. I'll be giving away a set of KOS KSC 75s. All you'll have to do to be considered for the giveaway is be subscribed to this channel. Also, consider clicking the bell, that way you'll get notified when I upload future videos. So, let's talk about the 17.7X Go from Drop. This is a balanced closed-back headphone that Drop has produced in partnership with Beyerdynamics. I have to say that I really like the black aesthetics of this thing, but it is not the typical midnight blue colorway from Drop that you might expect if you've seen some of their earlier products like the KOS 95X or the Sennheiser 6XX. In terms of its packaging, it's pretty basic, just a cardboard box. But you get an extra set of sheepskin pads to go along with the standard Beyerdynamic pads and an unbalanced cable inside the box. What you don't get inside the box is a balance cable or any other kind of usable cable for that matter, but more on that later. You also don't receive a carry case, a bag, a pouch, or anything like that, which the normal DT1770 does reportedly come with. In any case, let's talk about the cable to start. It's atrocious. It's springy, made out of a rubber material, it kinks up very easily, and it never straightens back out. The connector also hangs down too far and annoyingly hits your shoulder, so not only is there not a balance cable in the box for a balanced set of headphones, the cable they do give you is basically unusable. On their forums, Drop makes mention of one day creating a balance cable for purchase, but all plans that I've seen look exactly like the cable that comes with the headphones in the box, which even if this were balanced, I would never consider using it. What Drop should have done here is include a nice balance cable and some kind of adapter to be able to use the headphones both in balanced and non-balanced operations. Luckily, Heart Audio Cables has you covered with such a headphone cable for this set. I will place a link below to a replacement cable that will work out quite well if you decide to take the plunge with the 17.7X Go after this review. I'm wearing the cable right now so that you can see what it looks like. In terms of the other accessories, both pads are quality velour and quality sheepskin, and they're comfortable for what they are. Concerning their sonic differences and other factors, well, we'll get into that a bit later. With regard to the general build, it's classic Beyerdynamics, with all the good and the bad that comes with it. It's a bit heavy, but it's also mostly made out of metal. I think the cup material may be a soft touch plastic. The clamp isn't terrible here, but it does clamp a bit more at the top of the ear cup near the temple area. However, the sheepskin pads are thicker, more plush, and soften the clamp a bit in the temple area. The pressure of the clamp also does get better with use, but you may have to bend the headband to actually get it to become the most comfortable for you. The headband itself appears to be wrapped in a leatherette, and the thickness of the padding in the middle of the headband tapers as you move towards the ear cups. Overall, I'd say that Beyerdynamics could have done better here, but it's sufficient, I guess. It's not overly plush, but not super comfy either. The cups adjust a bit, and there is some play with the yokes themselves, but there isn't a huge amount of swivel here, and there may be some rattle here or there. So like I said, typical Beyerdynamics. So let's talk about the sound. To my ears, it sounds like they've resolved some of the peakiness of the DT1770, and this is what the graphs show on drop as well. They're missing a bit of air that you would get with an open-backed headphone, but they do almost sound open. And the soundstage is great for a closed-back set. It's a bit narrower than an Argon, and a bit wider than an Emu Teak, if that puts things in perspective. It is not as wide as something like a K7XX. In terms of timbre and the rest of the presentation, these headphones are a bit of a chameleon, but they are never sharp or sibilant as some of the other Beyers tend to be. With the stock Beyer pads, they are on the warm side of neutral and have warm undertones from an emphasized bass response. This is really the only warm Beyer I've ever heard, and it's great. With the sheepskin pads, the warm effects increase and you get an even darker presentation, but you lose out on some of the staging that occurs with the Beyerdynamic pads. With both of these pads, detail is above average, but ultimately I do not recommend either of these pads as they're not the most detailed. Instead, I recommend the Hi-Fi Man angled fenestrated Elite sheepskin pads instead. While they do not fit into the groove of the Beyer's pad mounting system, they do fit tightly over the lip and form a good seal. In any case, what you get with these pads is a more detailed presentation and a diminished bass emphasized warming effect. The DT177X essentially begins to sound more like a closed-back HD650, with better soundstage, imaging, detail, separation, and more treble extension and a tighter, more well-controlled bass. Yes, that's what I said. No double takes here. They do sound like HD650s. Crazy, I know. But that is what you get with this pad adjustment, and this is why I've fallen in love with this set. If it is missing anything in comparison to the 6XX, it lacks a bit of openness because, well, they are a closed set of headphones, and you can only fight physics so much. Additionally, these are not only chameleon-like when it comes to the pads, but also when it comes to the amp selection. In other words, I found the 1770X to be extremely amp dependent, changing greatly in tone depending on the amp you drive them with, generally taking on the tonal qualities and other properties of that amp. I personally like to switch between my Loxg P20 in balanced operation for a more neutral output, and my dark voice for a slight kiss of warmth. The dark voice would be my synergistic pick here. It sacrifices a minuscule amount of detail, but adds the perfect amount of warmth to the 17.7X. I will note that I tend to want to add back in a small amount of bass with the dark voice, using a manualized EQ, like the JDS Labs Subjective 3. I should also note that the Centric Stack Portable sounds great with the 1770X Go for portable use as well, and it has a bass boost, which is a great sound profile for this set. I was disappointed, however, to find that the true bass switch on the Zendac was hit or miss for the 1770X Go, causing an odd sub-bass flutter on some more dynamic tracks. Having said all of this, all of my comments thus far only apply to the 17.7X Go after burn-in. And let me tell you, burn-in is required, and it takes forever with this set. It took my set of cans at least 127 hours to burn in. I almost sent them back, to be honest. I had heard a pre-production set at Can Jam in 2019, and what I got out of the box wasn't even close to what I heard originally. They come out of the box sounding overly treble-centric with zero, and I mean zero, bottom end. After about 127 hours, they finally warmed up and the bass finally presented itself. They kept changing mildly for at least another week or so So if you decide to take the plunge with these, give them at least a week to warm up before you make any judgments. You'll be happy that you did. In summary, if these aren't my favorite pair of closed-back headphones ever to this point, they're definitely close to it. They're on par with my Emutique, but very different from it. If I had to pick one and only one, I might pick these due to their versatility. What they lack compared to the Teak is a dynamic slam, even in their most basic configuration with the included sheepskin pads. Instead, the Go's have a warm, pillowy low end rather than an overly dynamic one. Ultimately, I can live with this, however, as dynamics here are more than acceptable. They're just not what I would call exceptional. One thing to note is that this headphone is greatly affected by pad adjustments and amplifier choice. And now I'm talking to Drop directly. What the world needs now is an open back version of this, based perhaps on the DT1990. Create it and solve that headphone's issues like you have here, and you might just disrupt the market. So go. Seriously, do it now. To all my viewers who have made it to the end of this rather long review, remember to like and subscribe, especially if you want to be considered for the giveaway, and I'm out.